If you were exiled to a frozen wilderness, could you still live this comfortably with hot meals prepared in the snow, fresh fish pulled straight from icy waters, wild greens harvested beneath the frost, and steaming stew you can almost smell through the screen? Thick soup warmed by snowmelt water. This pair's survival in the frozen wild looks better than what I eat at home. In this episode, the hunter and the builder arrive in a remote northern snowfield to challenge themselves to spend nothing and build a winter shelter fit for royalty. After their last failure, the hunter is brimming with confidence this time. He even vows that every single day, they'll finish a solid section of the house. With light steps, the two disembark and begin their fight against the snow. The first problem to solve is water, but this start seems easier than last time. After walking only a short distance, they find a stream. The hunter quickly notices thin ice drifting on the surface. He dares not act rashly and cautiously tastes a drop only to realize it's salty meltwater. The two are deeply disappointed. What they thought was a gift from nature turns out to be a cruel illusion. With no choice, they follow the frozen stream, heading upstream. As the cold intensifies, the heavyset builder starts to falter, constantly wiping frost and sweat from his face. The hunter notices something is wrong. He immediately pulls out his knife and cuts into a frozen vine. Clear droplets slowly seep out. The hunter quickly brings it to the builder's mouth. After replenishing some fluids, the builder instantly regains his strength. Just like that, the two push forward under the biting wind for another 3 kilometers, and finally discover a small, unfrozen spring in the forest. The water looks crystal clear, meeting the standard for drinking, but considering the builder's condition, the hunter decides to boil it first. After drinking their fill and regaining energy, they return to the open snowfield to start building the shelter. As night slowly falls, the hunter goes out to gather materials, while fallen branches and ice-locked logs can serve as the perfect foundation. Clearly, the frozen ground isn't cooperating. Nothing goes as planned. The stubborn hunter works for hours, yet makes almost no progress. The first day ends without meeting their goal. The sound of reality slapping back can be heard even across continents. On the second day, they wake naturally. The hunter wants to help his beloved builder recover, so today he changes strategy, planning to dig deeper into the snow for better materials. Seeing the hunter's confidence, the builder refuses to fall behind and immediately starts searching nearby. But luck is clearly not on his side. After wandering around, he finds nothing useful. In the end, he only gathers a few frozen logs. Meanwhile, the hunter keeps working in the snow, but after hours of digging, he realizes this land offers no easy resources and returns to camp in disappointment. When the builder comes back to start heating water, he sees the hunter empty-handed and finally realizes this man may not be reliable, at least for today. It seems they can only rely on minimal supplies, but surviving on that alone is clearly not a solution. They had to find something else to go with it. Just as the two were racking their brains, something clueless wandered right into camp, a completely unaware little creature. Because it walked straight into the hungry eyes of the hunter and builder. It might be a low-tier resource, but at least it was edible. In less than 3 minutes, the hunter gathered a whole basket. Using the materials the builder collected earlier, they decided to make a hot snowfield soup. Just hearing the name sounded comforting. The builder even patted his chest confidently, promising it would taste great once cooked. The hunter paced around excitedly nearby. After a round of cooking, the steaming soup was finally ready. The hunter grabbed one eagerly, put it straight into his mouth, and spat it out in a second. The builder couldn't believe it, thinking the hunter was messing with him, so he decided to taste it himself. But the result was exactly the same. This time, even the builder began doubting his own skills. Honestly, these two really can't endure hardship. If this were given to a true survival expert, it would be considered a gourmet meal. Fortunately, there were still supplies left, so the two sat in the snow, drinking hot water. Time soon reached the third day. The hunter seemed to be hallucinating from hunger. He pointed toward a distant ridge and said there must be rich resources waiting there. The builder, perhaps just as hungry, nodded along without hesitation. Nearby lay plenty of timber and abandoned materials, perfect for making a sled to reach the other side. After 4 hours of hard work, the exhausted builder collapsed onto the snow, but the sled was finally completed. Early on the 4th day, the two set off toward the distant ridge. Perhaps driven by the promise of resources, after a burst of effort, they arrived. The builder looked at the tiny snowy patch and grew uneasy, wondering what such a small place could offer. The hunter noticed his concern and immediately reassured him, telling him to just wait for the harvest. Soon, the hunter got busy on his own, quickly crafting a simple tool and heading out. Sure enough, this area was far richer than their previous site. The hunter moved steadily, testing as he went, and soon secured a solid catch. Meanwhile, the builder on shore stayed busy, searching everywhere for supplies because, based on experience, the hunter often returned empty-handed. Soon, the builder found some edible plants. They tasted good and were rich in nutrients. He eagerly put them into his mouth. The texture was like eating caviar, a rare and precious treat. The hunter's efforts paid off. At last, he could achieve his goal of 2 solid catches a day, but he still wasn't satisfied. Perhaps luck was on their side. While only searching for extra materials, the hunter unexpectedly found a major prize. Waiting as the harvest reached shore, the builder broke into a joyful smile. After enduring so many hardships, at last, they could eat something that felt truly human. After the builder cleaned the catch with a swift, practiced motion, he proudly showed off a handful of bright, precious roe. This stuff was a real treasure. Even in a restaurant, you'd pay a fortune for it, and somehow, it ended up in their hands today. And sure enough, the builder lived up to his reputation. With ingredients this good, you barely need anything fancy. Before long, a flawless winter feast was ready. The colors, the textures, even a hardcore survival legend would cry and ask, "Are you sure this is survival?" But clearly right now, the hunter and the builder had no mood to admire it like artwork. They dug in like wolves. They couldn't even remember the last time they ate real meat. The builder proudly bragged about his skills, and when he saw the hunter rubbing his fingers nonstop, he knew that was the best compliment possible. After eating their fill, they decided to sleep through the night and head back to the previous camp at first light. Morning comes unusually early out here. When they woke up, they set off as planned, hauling their load back. Maybe the hunter was traumatized by hunger because he insisted on tying everything down securely, then went out again to hunt for more supplies. Meanwhile, the builder stayed put, patiently working and waiting for the hunter to return. But the builder got too absorbed in his task, and when he finally looked up again, the rope he'd tied earlier had already snapped. What he was sitting on was drifting away, pulled outward by the wind. The builder froze, completely panicked, until the hunter finally surfaced in the distance. He heard the builder shouting at the top of his lungs and shouted back just as fiercely, swearing he'd never leave him alone again. After paddling and fighting the drift all afternoon, they finally made it back to camp, but now food became a problem again. All they had left was one last ration, their final safety net. Luckily, tonight was a full moon, and the rising conditions would push life closer to camp. This was when the hunter finally showed his true edge. Right away, he landed a massive catch, a feast worthy of a king. And just like that, the timeline had already reached the final day of the challenge. Before dawn, he went alone into the snowy forest, searching for the perfect ingredients to match the meat. And he found a wild curry-like herb. Paired with the meat, it would be incredible. So he set a pot over the fire and heated it up, adding melted snow water and the fragrant spice. Once it boiled, he lowered the prepared meat into the pot to simmer. After half an hour of bubbling heat, a pot of rich curry stew made its triumphant appearance. This meal, packed with Southeast Asian vibes, left both of them completely satisfied and helped them finish the challenge on the final day. This time, the location shifts to the snowy ridgelines of the Rhodope Mountains. Anyone experienced knows wildlife signs are everywhere in this region. For the hunter and the builder, it's basically a buffet if you're skilled enough. The moment they arrive, they immediately start preparing for food and shelter. The hunter shows off his never-miss precision, claiming he can land a perfect throw every time. The builder refuses to be outdone and shows off his family heirloom, a 100-year-old cooking pot passed down for generations. After the show and tell is over, they each carry their precious gear and move forward. The first step to surviving out here is finding water. But after walking for most of the day, not only do they find none, storm clouds also begin to gather. That is a very bad sign. They have to find water and set camp before the storm hits fast. After squeezing past the cliffline, a small river finally appears ahead. Water is solved. Next, they need flat ground for a shelter, and this spot looks like the perfect choice. Just as the hunter begins building a lean-to, a chorus of wolf howls echoes around them. It's the builder's first time hearing something like that, and it sends chills through him. The whole atmosphere turns heavy and unsettling, but their hands can't stop for even a second. Then the sky darkens, and the rain starts falling, making everything even worse. To face this on day one is enough to break the builder's nerves, so he immediately hides inside the tent, leaving the hunter to finish the remaining work alone in the rain. The rain lasts 2 full hours. And when the clouds finally clear, the hunter has completed the main structure of the lean-to. The builder stares at the fresh, clean mountain air after the storm and decides to do something useful, collecting a special leaf perfect for boiling into a warm tea. Meanwhile, the hunter focuses on starting a fire. But then a hilarious scene happens. Because there's too much water in the pot and the builder doesn't notice in time, he actually puts out the fire the hunter had worked so hard to build. The hunter stares at the builder's awkward face, so angry he could have bitten through a radio message. Seriously, you don't fear a godlike opponent, you fear a pig-like teammate. Next, they decide to head out and find some food. If you ever see this in the wild, do not step on it because it's a morel mushroom, an insanely delicious, top-tier ingredient. And outside, it sells for a ridiculous price. At the same time, the hunter carries his bow, scanning for prey. Suddenly, a few clueless mountain goats jump into view. The hunter looks at that roast goat on legs and feels certain. He even takes off his shoes to creep closer quietly, but the goats get spooked and bolt instantly. The hunter freezes on the spot, his face screaming speechless disbelief. Meanwhile, the builder makes another shocking discovery. He finds a whole patch of wood sorrel, a premium ingredient that can rival morels. Intensely fragrant, sweet, and sour on the tongue, one bite and your whole body feels recharged. But even though the builder finds high-end ingredients, the amount is just too small. Two grown men splitting it still feels painfully pathetic. Luckily, when the builder goes to fetch water, he spots fish in the river. So he calls the hunter over, hoping he can catch a few to eat. But the hunter hesitates because they have no tools at all, and catching fish barehanded is extremely difficult. So the hunter tries to persuade the builder to catch them, instead secretly planning to let the builder struggle first, so he can step in later and look impressive. But to his surprise, the builder strikes instantly. The moment he steps into the water, he grabs one. The hunter can only force an awkward smile. Then the builder catches several more in a row. Watching the simple, earnest builder, the hunter can only comfort himself, fools have lucky days. But thankfully, after all that chaos, they finally had meat to eat. Now it was the builder's moment to shine. First, he put the prepared fish into the pot. Then he sliced the morels into chunks. Next, he added plenty of forest leaves, covered the pot, and simmered it gently for 20 minutes. No wonder he's top tier. Even out in the wild, he still obsesses over color, aroma, and taste. Right before serving, he sprinkled a pinch of that sour herb. If I didn't say anything, who would ever guess this was made in the wilderness? The hunter was clearly conquered by his cooking. Bite after bite, he couldn't stop. The builder told the hunter that if these morels were paired with other meat, the flavor would go to another level. Hearing that, the hunter silently swore he'd catch real game tomorrow. Early the next morning, the hunter grabbed his gear and set out full of confidence. But the sky had other plans. Rain fell again through the mountain forest. Aside from the unlucky hunter, every animal had gone into hiding. None of them came out to feed. The frustrated hunter sat on a rock, wondering why misfortune always chose him. And then he suddenly heard mountain goats calling in the distance. This might be his only chance. So he moved forward again, carefully. After last time's lesson, he didn't dare rush a shot. He could only trail behind the goats until he lost them completely. Back at camp, the starving builder waited and waited, but the hunter never returned. So he went out to forage on his own. Luckily, his luck held. He discovered a nest of quail eggs, and it nearly made him jump with joy. Today, he planned a morel and egg scramble. The taste was so good it felt unfair. Only it was a pity he couldn't share it with his beloved hunter. Meanwhile, back with the empty-handed hunter, his mood sank to the bottom. If he returned with nothing again, it would be humiliating, because he had promised himself he'd give the builder a king's feast, so he couldn't quit now. Have you ever seen anyone eat with this much ceremony in the wilderness? Spices rubbed in with care, side dishes prepared like a ritual. Every step screams that Matt is a true top-tier chef, disciplined and proud. But where did this goat come from? Let's rewind to one day earlier. After days without catching anything, the hunter was too ashamed to face the builder. He even started doubting his own professional skill. But after a fierce inner battle, he decided he had to bring something back to protect his status as the hunter. Then suddenly, he spotted that same goat nearby, the one that had escaped him again and again. This was his last chance. The hunter held his breath and crept in, then locked onto the target and struck with all his force. Staring at the catch in his hands, his confidence as the hunter finally reignited. He wished he could teleport straight in front of the builder just to show off his victory, but the hunt had taken too long, and the sky was already dimming. So the hunter reluctantly decided to sleep alone for the night. After starving all day, he chose to grill some meat and patch his body back together. You have to admit, wild meat hits different. One bite, crispy outside, tender inside, and the aroma exploded into the cold air. Early the next morning, the hunter strapped on his trophy without hesitation and rushed back toward camp. He was so excited he felt unstoppable. Even a 9-kilometer trek through the mountains didn't feel tiring. And the moment he saw the builder, he knew every step had been worth it. The sweet, innocent builder looked at the plump goat and raised a big thumbs up. The hunter wanted to sit down and tell the whole story of his hunt, but the builder had already rushed to prepare the cooking tools. Facing such a precious ingredient, he planned a full-on roast, eating until they couldn't move. And that's how we got the opening scene. While they waited, the builder also made a pot of goat soup with morels. 2 hours later, the roasted goat filled the air with irresistible fragrance. Look at that texture. Look at that color. The builder couldn't wait. He took a bite and instantly raised his thumb again. Wild meat really is firm, springy, and satisfying. Then he cut it into small pieces, sat down, and savored it slowly, dipping each bite into that morel broth. Who wouldn't fall in love with a meal like this? The builder and the hunter were unbelievably satisfied with the feast. Their laughter echoed through the forest. So, their challenge for this episode ends right here. Next, the builder and the hunter head to Copper Canyon in Mexico. They'll stay here for 7 days, and using only the most primitive resources, they aim to eat like royalty again. This time, both of them are full of confidence, because this region is rich with life. Deer, raccoons, birds, fish, crabs, rare treats everywhere. Not to mention cactus and wild fruits they can boil into food. Which means, over these 7 days, they might feast every single meal. Carrying that sweet fantasy, they begin the first day of the challenge. First, they must descend the slope and find a water source to set up camp. After hours of walking, as the temperature keeps rising, their stamina drops fast. Now they have only 4 hours until sunset, not nearly enough to reach clean water. So the hunter decides immediately they'll rest somewhere nearby for the night. But with no water for so long, the builder was already showing signs of dehydration. Fortunately, there was a small puddle not far away. The water wasn't clear at all, but once boiled, it would still be drinkable. After drinking a little to stabilize themselves, the two of them quickly regained a bit of strength. They decided it was time to deal with dinner, and the builder really was a food genius. When it came to spotting ingredients, he was the real deal. Before long, he found a wild plant to cook, and that became their dinner. But the plant was toxic. Only thorough boiling could break down the harmful compounds inside. Yet the moment the hunter took a bite, he immediately felt something was wrong. The builder tried a bite too, and the taste hit harsh and dizzying. Not long after, the hunter reacted. His whole body turned miserable up and down, non-stop. Then, as night fell, the temperature plunged. The two of them shivered so badly they couldn't sleep. The builder had to wrap cloth around his head to keep his skin from freezing. The next day, the hunter felt awful, obviously still paying for last night's mistake. The builder looked at him with real concern and decided to do something. He gathered vitamin-rich pine needles, planning to boil a pot of pine needle tea. After a steaming cup went down, the hunter's spirits improved immediately. 2 days without a proper meal, he went out to search for food. But after wandering for half the day, the hunter stayed consistently reliable and came back empty-handed again. The builder didn't look disappointed, because he knew the hunter wasn't at full strength. Luckily, the forest was full of fallen nuts. They smelled amazing and were packed with calories, the perfect fuel to restore energy. Back at camp, the builder started a fire and began cooking. The roasted nuts smelled rich and warm, but he wasn't done yet. This time, the builder had brought 3 seasonings. First, he melted sugar into syrup. Then he poured in the nuts and stirred until coated. Soon, a batch of glossy candied nuts was complete. Look at those perfect sugar threads who wouldn't start drooling. After sharing part of it, they saved the rest as emergency rations. Early on the 3rd day, they boiled a morning tea with real ceremony. Once their bodies finally warmed up, the builder and the hunter set off again, full of confidence. With those candied nuts as fuel, they quickly found clean water. This was where their dream would begin. Whether they could eat like royalty depended on this spot. Have you ever seen someone use a scorpion as fishing bait? Right now, the builder's head was filled with royal feasts, and after starving for 3 days, the hunter's hunger had hit its peak. So, they were determined to catch fish this time. The hunter chopped a branch and made a fishing rod. Then, the two began searching everywhere for bait. Before long, the hunter flipped over a rock and found a scorpion crawling underneath. After tying the bait on, they started fishing with full expectation, imagining fish rushing in to compete for the food. But reality was cast after cast, and failure after failure. Soon, the hunter spotted the real problem. The branch was too soft, and the rod too short. It simply couldn't work as a fishing rod. After all that struggle, he had to give up on the rod and switch to another method. Watching the hunter constantly tinkering, the builder realized he couldn't place all his hope on him alone. So he went out by himself to look for food. No surprise, the builder was basically born lucky. He hadn't even taken 2 steps before finding Mexican chili peppers. Meanwhile, the hunter kept trying to fish nonstop. Thankfully, this time his luck wasn't terrible. Fish began biting one after another, and he landed 3 sardines right away. Then he went to check the line he had set earlier, and unbelievably, there was a catch. Now they had 4 fish. Compared to the past few days, this was a huge haul. When the builder saw the fish the hunter brought back, he almost cried. After nearly 4 days of hunger, they could finally eat their first real meat. The builder rushed to process the ingredients, remove the bones, then grilled the fish over the fire. Next, using his seasonings and roe, he made a sweet and sour sauce. Finally, he placed the grilled fish into the pot and soaked it briefly in cold water to tighten the texture and make the flesh firmer. The two of them tore into the fish impatiently and couldn't stop praising it. It finally felt like they were alive again. On the 5th day, after waking up, the hunter first checked the fishing line from yesterday. And wow, another fish was on the hook. Just waking up and already having breakfast, what a feeling. But compared to the royal feast goal they had sworn to, this was still far from it. So, the hunter obsessed with that dream feast set off on another hunting run. This time, he found animal tracks along the way, so he set several traps, hoping tomorrow would bring a real banquet. Day 6, a sudden rain woke them both. The hunter could only think about the traps he had set yesterday. What kind of food would they get today? Everything was still unknown. But today, the second-rate hunter hit the jackpot. The moment he checked the trap, a fat, meaty raccoon was lying inside. He was so excited. Finally, an actual feast. On the way back, the hunter got another unexpected reward, a wild chili plant. He decided to bring the whole thing back for the builder. When he tossed the chili plant and raccoon down, the builder was so happy he almost jumped. This time, they chose a simple, no-frills way to cook premium ingredients the simplest way. First, the prepared meat goes straight into the pot. Then chili is added to bring out the flavor. Finally, the lid is closed and it's stewed over high heat for 2 hours. While waiting, the builder decides to take a swim as a small reward, but the relaxed swim makes him lose track of time. When the hunter returns, thick black smoke is pouring out of the iron pot. As soon as the lid is lifted, oh no, all that delicious raccoon meat has turned into charcoal. Right then, the builder finishes bathing and comes back ready to enjoy the meal, only to see a pot of burnt meat and freeze on the spot. This is nothing less than the greatest insult of his cooking career. But under harsh wilderness conditions, even burnt meat cannot be wasted. With no other choice, they decide to cut away the burnt parts and make do. But once the charred sections are removed, they realize there's almost nothing left to eat. So the hunter heads out once again to find food. The raccoon had given him real confidence. He believes this time he'll return loaded again. As if nature itself couldn't bear to see them starve, every few steps, a large wild bird appears right in the hunter's line of sight. Bow, drawn arrow released. Smooth and decisive. That night, the hunter returns to camp with the bird. The builder's face lights up with a smile again. This time, he decides to redeem himself by making a clay-baked turkey. First, a 1-meter deep pit is dug. Then a fire is built inside. Stones are laid at the bottom. The marinated turkey is placed in. Then, agave leaves are used to seal the opening, to keep all the moisture locked inside. Finally, it's buried in sand and left to bake overnight. By morning, a perfect turkey will be waiting. When daylight arrives, the two brush away the sand. Whether they can finally eat a royal-level feast depends on this moment. As the agave leaves are lifted, a rich wave of meat aroma rushes out. After an entire night of slow cooking, the turkey has locked in its moisture while staying incredibly tender. The hunter takes a bite and nods again and again, once more acknowledging the builder's skill. After 7 days of twists and hardship, they finally enjoy a feast that truly lives up to the name.